Well, if it isn't the movie that will never have me looking at pizza the same way. Netflix's The Platform 2 is the follow-up to one of the strangest and most captivating sci-fi horror films released on the platform, and if you thought the first one was confusing,
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
this video is all about answering some of the film's biggest questions. What was with that pyramid of kids? Who's this guy? And who do I complain to if there's a problem with my meal? Now make sure to like and subscribe because here we go. The Platform 2 starts with various people signing up to take part in the VSC, or Vertical Self-Management Center. We'll come to know it as the Pit. If people actually knew what went on here, I doubt they'd be clamoring to get in. Even Imogiri, who conducts some of the interviews and later becomes a participant, isn't exactly sure what goes on here. In the first platform, we learned that the administration, the mysterious organization that runs the Pit, offers a prize for those who can endure it. Goring from Platform 1 was offered a college degree if he could last 6 months, and Trimagasi was offered his freedom after he murdered a man by throwing his TV out the window. It was either that or spend the rest of his life in a psych ward. And we start off with this interview process meeting several characters who we'll run into throughout the film. Chiefly among them are floor mates Perempuen and Zamiatin. Apologies on these pronunciations. Each have their own reason for joining the Pit. Perempuen feels responsible for the death of a child. In the outside world, she was a renowned artist with an exhibit of sculptures depicting the violent behavior of animals. It's kind of ironic she ends up here where she gets to witness firsthand the most violent animal of all, man. She invited her boyfriend to the exhibit where she would meet his son for the first time, and well, the boy tripped into one of her sculptures, gouging him in the eye and killing him. To make matters worse, Perempuen knew this sculpture was a danger yet took no precautionary measures, so she feels responsible for this boy's death, stating the thing she wants is time to forgive herself. Zemiatin's origins are a bit more ambiguous. According to the interviewers, he's here at the behest of his parents to learn discipline. Over the past few years, he's lost his job, family, and even his own sanity, almost setting fire to his parents' house while they were sleeping. He calls himself a man of science, devoting his life to pure mathematics, but when he came across the question of what the square root of -1 is, he kinda went crazy. We'll see him write this equation on the wall over and over again. The square root of -1 was initially called an imaginary number because it seemed impossible to exist in the real world. So Zamiatin concluded that if we accepted something that doesn't match any physical reality, he could never trust mathematics or anything else for that matter. Perempuen is the opposite. While she isn't overly religious, she asks the question,
¿Qué tiene de malo lo imaginario?
and the imaginary is a theme that pervades much of the Platform 2. Early on in the story, we hear about a man known as the Master. He's the man who laid the foundation for what would become the law, a set of rules each prisoner must follow in order to ensure everyone gets their fair share of food. In the first platform, the Pit is essentially anarchy. Those at the top absolutely gorge themselves with food as those below starve to death. If you pay close attention, you'll actually know that the Platform 2 takes place before the Platform 1, making it a prequel, but we'll get into that a little bit later. The thing that gives the Pit its structure now is something known as the law. This has divided the platformers into two groups: the loyalists who follow the law and the ways of the master, and the barbarians who are basically everyone else. You can think of these two as follows. The loyalists believe in order at the cost of freedom, while the barbarians believe in freedom at the cost of order. But what I want to go back to is this idea of the imaginary. There is no proof the master ever existed. According to this man named Robespierre, no one knows if the master is still alive, and the only ones lucky enough to have seen him are the quote anointed ones. If we're to believe Robespierre, the master survived a full month with no food, then another month with no food, carving pieces of his flesh so that those in need could feed. It's completely possible that this was a made-up or imaginary story that the anointed ones clung on to in order to give them power and control of the masses. It's also worth mentioning that the historical Robespierre was a French revolutionary who endorsed the execution of thousands of people, including political opponents and counter-revolutionaries. This Robespierre will do the same by killing anyone who doesn't follow the law. It goes without saying that the connections to Christianity are pretty blatant. The master is referred to by some as the Messiah or Hidalgo. Hidalgo was a Roman Catholic priest and revolutionary leader in Mexico. Christ himself was considered a revolutionary. The master gives up his flesh for the people, similar to the act of communion which first took place at the Last Supper. When Perempuan makes it to the final floor, she'll have a hallucination of the master and his 12 disciples, referencing the Last Supper. But if you look closely, there are only 11 disciples. The Messiah tosses a knife at Perempuan, suggesting she is that final disciple, the knife symbolic of her being Judas, the betrayer, just like she betrays the master. Ironically, it's her Last Supper of sorts too. You'll also note that the final floor is 333. There are 2 people per floor, meaning there are 666 people in the pit, the number commonly associated with Satan. Perhaps this master is more malevolent than his followers made him out to be. Even believers of the law revere it, as its followers put their faith in it akin to religious fanaticism. One believer states, it's almost like a promise of heaven. At first, the law seems like a reasonable alternative to the chaos seen in the first movie, and the rules of the law start off pretty simple. You are only entitled to eat your own dish, and you may swap your dish with someone else if the other person agrees to it. The problem with this system is it only takes one person to be greedy for the whole thing to crumble. If someone takes my pizza, then I'll take someone's croquettes. Then they'll take someone else's dish, creating a domino effect of aggrieved people. So in order for this system work, there has to be enforcement. If someone is caught stealing more than their share, the prisoners in the 2 levels above them are to take up arms and ensure this does not happen again. Punishments include getting your arm cut off or even death. The rules are so strict that if someone dies, their food must go to waste. As Robespierre states,
Nadie debe ver un premio en la muerte de una compañera, ¿no?
Perempuan is lucky that her first month in the pit, she's on level 24, and by the end of her month, they get word that food has reached it as far as level 175. This is something never seen in the Platform 1. The hope is that as more people join the Loyalists, the law will spread and more people will survive. But every month, the pit resets. The prisoners are randomly placed on new floors, and new prisoners who know nothing of the law are brought in to replace the dead. So when Perempuan wakes up in a new month on floor 180, it's no surprise that when the platform reaches her, there's no food left. Her floor mate ends up killing himself. He has been stealing food and doesn't want Perempuan to be punished for his mistakes. He was also seen coughing up blood, so who knows how much time this guy had anyways. But his final request is for her to tell his kids that he loves them, an odd thing for a guy to say who abandoned them because he could no longer trust his physical reality. It hints that he's had a change of heart. With her floor mate dead, Perempuan gets a new one at the start of the next cycle. This girl is known simply as Cellmate, and you might remember her as Tonks from the Harry Potter series or Osha from Game of Thrones. We'll find out she's actually been in the pit for 6 months and had her arm cut off by an anointed one by the name of Dagon Babi. According to Cellmate, she was caught feeding a starving man with a dead person's meal. Remember that according to the law, meals of the dead are supposed to be thrown away, so she technically broke the law even if it meant saving someone's life. Her cellmate at the time, a woman by the name of Kakashi, a name that means beloved, gouged Dagon Babi's eyes out and was subsequently killed. Dagon Babi represents the dark side of the law, how the law's cold enforcement leads to a system that lacks empathy. It also points at the system's corruption. His interpretation of the law decides who lives, dies, and the punishments that follow. He justifies everything by saying,
Matamos para edificar un futuro donde nadie más matará.
It is Dagon Babi who ends up cutting off Perempuan's arm for disobeying the rules. She went down to kill a barbarian when the law states only the first 4 prisoners above the barbarian are to take part in this quote-unquote pacification. So even though she was enforcing the law and trying to do good, she ended up breaking the law and is subsequently punished. Her cellmate, because this was her second offense, is tied to the platform to be eaten alive as she descends further into the pit. Seeing the corruption of this system firsthand and believing she'll never make it out, Perempuan decides to escape. Her cellmate said the best time to do this would be during what's called the interval, that reset period at the end of the month where all the prisoners are gassed so that they can be assigned to a new level. The cellmate must have some sort of background in chemistry, as she states the gas used is a variant of sevoflurane, commonly used for anesthesia. What they want to do is trick the administration into thinking they're dead, so their bodies will be brought up top with the dead ones. And in order to do this, the cellmate says quite cryptically that they need to find the quote quote-unquote drowned dog. This begins Perempuen's journey deeper into the pit to find this dog, rallying a group of anti-loyalists to fight off Dagon Bobby and his zealots. Perempuen ends up finding this painting, and a final battle takes place, resulting in the death of Dagon Bobby, who claims she has condemned everyone in the pit to die. With no order, the pit will slowly descend into chaos. And this basically proves that the events of Platform 2 take place before the events of Platform 1, making it a prequel. When we begin the Platform 1, everything is chaos, a result of the dismantling of the law. Plus, dead characters from the Platform 1 appear in the Platform 2, such as Baharat and Trimagasi. But back to this drowned dog. We'll later find it's a reference to a painting. Every prisoner is allowed one comfort item, and this woman brought a painting of a drowned dog. By eating this painting, it causes Perempuen to convulse and fall unconscious, giving off the appearance that she's dead. It's also ironic that the sculpture of the animal that killed her boyfriend's child also happens to be a dog. My best guess is that the prisoners who are still alive are taken away separately. Thus, Perempuen was left to awaken alongside this large pile of floating corpses. According to NASA, extended periods of true zero gravity on Earth is impossible, which would suggest the pit is a structure in space. We really don't know what the pit is designed to do, but Goring in the first movie suggests it might be an experiment on how revolutions are started, because if those in charge know how they start, they can prevent them from happening in the first place. This is also where Perempuen sees a boy brought to floor 333. This is the same boy who makes it to the top of this child pyramid we've seen glimpses of throughout the film. In the beginning, the children play in harmony, taking orderly turns going down the slide. That is until something changes. Order turns to chaos as the children then fight their way to the top. This could all be a metaphor for the pit itself. A spotlight appears, shining on the child at the top. If I'm not mistaken, there are two familiar faces we'll see here. First is this small child, Mila, who is found on the same 333rd floor by Goring in the Platform 1. It looks like whichever child makes it to the top of this pyramid is chosen to be on the bottom of the pit. Just like the pit, one day you can be on the top and then on the bottom. And tell me if I'm wrong, but this looks a lot like Maharu from the Platform 1. There's a lot of conflicting information about her. Trimagasi says she's on the hunt to find her child, and every month she descends lower into the pit to find him. Imogiri says that's all a lie, that she actually interviewed Miharu 10 months ago and learned she has no kids or family at all. She's actually an actress who came to the pit with the wish of becoming the Asian Marilyn Monroe. The Platform 2 suggests there is some sort of connection between Miharu and this child, that it may even be hers, thus forcing her to lie to gain entry to the pit to search for him. There are several interpretations as to why a child is put on the bottom floor in a seemingly endless cycle. The child represents hope and innocence in a broken and unjust system. The child is also referred to as a message that serves as proof to the administration that something pure can emerge from the depths of suffering. Some have even argued that Mila being brought to the top is proof to the administration that radical change is needed. But in the Platform 2, the child also serves as a form of redemption for Perempuen. By sacrificing herself and saving this child, it may serve as redemption for the death of the boy at her art show. Perempuen and the boy make it to the very bottom, where a consort of emaciated people greet her, telling her her journey is over, but the boy will have another chance. One interpretation of the ending is that of symbolic death. Remember, Perempuen wanted time in order to forgive herself, and that's exactly what she got through her redemption. Trimagasi also states that the worst prison of all is the one we create for ourselves in our mind. By having this death, she has escaped both the physical prison of the pit and the metaphorical prison of her mind, which was bound by guilt. I also don't buy that there are dozens of people surviving here at the bottom, when those beyond floor 100 barely survive. These could be the ghosts of other people who have made it to the bottom. In the end credits, we'll see a montage of prisoners make it to the bottom, some with children and others without. Perhaps this is the only way to escape the pit, through a journey of suffering that forces one to confront their own mortality and risk everything for something greater. But the final twist is that Perempuen meets up with Goring when he makes it to the bottom. film. These two know each other, and it could be implied this is the boyfriend she talked about. In the first platform, Imogiri tells Goring that Mahari had been in the pit for at least 10 months, and if it was Mahari who chose the boy to be put on floor 333 at the end of platform 2, it would suggest there is at least a 10-month difference between these two films. Remember that there is no semblance of the law, the anointed ones, or the loyalists when Goring entered, so it would take at least a few cycles for that system to be completely dismantled. If you've seen my platform 1 video, you'll know my interpretation of that ending is Goring dies as well, so it makes sense these two are reunited in the afterlife. But now I turn it over to you. What did you think of the platform 2? I want to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.